Welcome to the third edition of the Sports on 580 2023 NFL Draft Day live show. Brendan Dworzinski, Fulton Caster, Jake Laban, and Dan Lucero all here with you. Some of us have switched where we are doing these shows from since the round 2 edition, but just like in round 2, the Chiefs are on the move. Kansas City moving up near the end of the third round. They are just about to pick. Fulton, you've got the return, by the way, that the Chiefs sent to, surprisingly, the Cincinnati Bengals to move up a few spots.
Yeah, of all the teams for the Chiefs to trade with, Cincinnati, I guess the third round's the spot where you don't care anymore about giving the Chiefs a direct rival, more firepower. All it took was pick 217. That is all this trade is.
Wow.
For the Chiefs to move up 3 spots with the Bengals, they are sending pick 217 to Cincinnati. That's it. That's all. If that's all it takes for the Chiefs to move up 3 spots, I really don't care what player you're getting. That's very little capital to give up to guarantee you get whatever guy you want here at 92.
And we've been talking about this for months at this point, that the Chiefs have so many picks going into this draft that you would expect them to be at least somewhat aggressive. And I'm glad we were right. I'm glad we were spot on about that. That makes me feel smart. But this is right in Brett Veach's wheelhouse. Go find a guy we want and then do whatever it takes to go get that guy.
Yeah, that's kind of been Veach's MO since he's been the GM of the Chiefs. They haven't been shy about cashing in that draft capital, moving up. And yeah, it was hard to imagine them taking 10 players in this draft. Now they're down to 8 picks. This is going to be their third of the 8 they've got. And let's see what it is.
All right, Jake, give us your pick. Who's it going to be?
I think it's an offensive lineman. I think it might be DeJuan Jones. The medicals must be scaring people because he was a first-round grade, and we know the Chiefs are not worried about medicals. So it might be DeJuan Jones. It could be Blake Freeland. I think they're going O-line. They have been very easy to scout, if you will. Last year, they needed edge, corner, and they needed wide receiver. They went corner, edge, wide receiver. This year, what do they need? They need wide receiver, O-line, edge. They've already gotten their edge and their wide receiver.
And we now know who the pick is. It has come across. We know from multiple sources. Matt Derrick, most recent, to tweet it out. The Chiefs have moved up, not for Anton Harrison. He went yesterday. A different offensive tackle from the Oklahoma Sooners, Wanya Moore. You want your tight end or your offensive tackle. You went and got your tight end or your offensive tackle. It's Wanya Morris. Let's go right back to Dan. Instant reaction. They finally got that offensive tackle, but this is a name that has come up, I believe, precisely 0 times as a potential fit for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be the world's foremost authority on Wanya Morris, but, it is interesting. There was a lot of thought the Chiefs were going to go with an Oklahoma offensive tackle. Just they go with Morris, who has definitely right tackle size, 6'5", 307. That's right tackle size, and held down the fort on the outside with Harrison last year, Anton Harrison, the first-round pick in that Oklahoma offensive line. Look, Oklahoma offensive linemen turn into good pros. That's one thing. That is a program that has turned out a lot of solid NFL linemen over the years. And you can do a lot worse than just blindly selecting Oklahoma offensive linemen. This is a guy who only allowed 1 sack last year. He was a second-team All-Big 12 player and fills the need. The Chiefs checked all the boxes. We said ad nauseum going into the draft: edge, wide receiver, offensive tackle. It would be a surprise if the Chiefs did anything but check those boxes in the first 3 rounds of the draft, and that's exactly what they've done.
All right, I'm going to get you the testing scores for Wanya Morris in just a moment. But first, I want to pull up this tweet from April 15th, so just about 2 weeks ago, from Mike Renner, who at the time was with Pro Football Focus. And he tweeted out perfect and his favorite day 2 fits across the NFL draft. If you would avert your attention to number 4 on this list, the Chiefs and Oklahoma offensive tackle Wanya Morris. So at least somebody somewhere out there in the draft world thought this was going to be a big pick. Fulton, we'll go to you next. I mean, the Chiefs had to get an offensive tackle here. And, we're at a point in the draft where it's essentially, if you feel like they've got the traits or you feel like they can be plug and play, there's usually one specific reason why you're taking a guy 3rd round or after, specifically late 3rd round and after. I mean, this almost felt like a no-brainer. You had to fill this need with one of these first few picks.
You really did, and I think we all, Jake made his thought on, maybe being DeJuan Jones here, but I think we all would have confidently said they're going offensive lineman here. Wanya Morris is fascinating. I have up Dane Breuer from the Athletics draft guide he put together for this NFL draft, and the consensus on Wanya Morris, really his thought on Wanya Morris is he's got the NFL size, length, and athleticism you want. It's the fundamentals where he was lacking. It would be occasionally his technique would get sloppy. If we know anything about the Chiefs and the offensive line specifically, they know how to coach up offensive linemen. They know how to clean up techniques on offensive linemen. They know how to get them into polished players. If the Chiefs' thought here was, let's take a guy who physically has the mold and abilities of a higher round pick, but is falling because of technique issues, why not take a chance on him? Because if I trust the Kansas City Chiefs to do anything with an offensive lineman, if they're going to attempt to do anything to make Wanya Morris their new starting right tackle, if he can win the position battle, if all they need to do is clean up his technique and become a more fundamentally sound offensive lineman, the Chiefs have the right coaches and the right players in the building to, I think, help Morris achieve that level. So if that's the idea here, you trade up through pick 92. All it's costing you is $217 to trade up those 3 spots. This is a spot where the Chiefs take a swing at something that I think is a very aggressive, but at the same time, kind of conservative swing with what they need to attempt to do.
Here's a fun little question for you. Do you guys know where Wanya Morris began his college career?
It was somewhere in the SEC.
You are correct, Jake. He started his career at Tennessee. That's significant to note because he'll be playing right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. In all likelihood, he'll be a right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. He'll be playing next to a former teammate on the same Tennessee offensive line in Trey Smith. You want continuity, you want chemistry, you want communication, 3 things that are exceptionally important along an offensive line. You would imagine that Morris and Smith may already have that. Dan, would you like to inform the class?
Kraken 1, Colorado nothing, late first period.
Plenty of time left.
We already had a goal disallowed. That's what I was mad about earlier. That Colorado scored, they had it disallowed. Now it's just not our year, man. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
Jake, I wanted to get your take on this next. You went through a little bit of a rough patch at the end of the second round. End of rounds have been tough on you the last couple of days with all the good players that went on the end of the day on Thursday. Then Marvin Mims goes to the Broncos at the end of the second round tonight. How are we feeling at the end of round number 3?
I look at this pick for the Chiefs is so much that they just believe in their coaching and how they can develop. If you look at the 3 guys that they have taken, one of the guys, Felix Uzama, still a little bit raw. I mean, you saw the photo that Connor Riley put out on Twitter standing next to him. You're like, what's that, slot wide receiver doing? No, that was actually Felix Uzama. He's still a little bit raw. That's where Coach Culley, the defensive lineman, really is going to help Felix Uzama. I think the coaching for the Chiefs there will help out. Same thing when it comes to Rashee Rice. I think just having Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce all on your offense is going to make you explode when it comes to that. So it's more of we trust our system. Same thing here. Good athlete in Morris. Size, skill, ability. Andy Heck will coach him up. You've got so many guys there who can help coach him up. And I also think this. I think this is a pick for the future. If he comes in, I look at this as just like another Oklahoma pick. When they took Creed Humphrey, they had Austin Blythe. I think when Creed Humphrey walked into the building, they go, oh, wow, this guy's special. We can move on. I think that's what's going to happen right now for Morris. I think Morris is going to end up being a guy who, if he comes in and doesn't play well, that's fine. He'll be your starting right tackle then in 2024, get a year under his belt. I think also this kind of shows that they really do think Darian Kennard is an interior guy. I think they've moved on from Darian Kennard, but I think this is a future coach him up. If he's great, play him over Lucas Niang. If not, the Chiefs' offensive line room is set. They've got 9 guys now. Their offensive line is set to me with Allegretti, with now Morris, and I'm forgetting one. Who else am I forgetting?
And Prince Tagovailoa's in the room.
And then Kennard. So, like, their 9 guys are set unless they take another late one. But I think overall, this is a pick for the future. And if he's that good, it's a pick for now. They believe so much in their coaching staff and their offensive line with this type of pick.
Fulton, you were mentioning earlier that it only took a 6th rounder, 217, to go and make this deal happen, which really doesn't feel like a whole lot when you're talking about probably the second best team in the AFC being willing to move back with the first team, the very best team in the entire NFL, let alone in the AFC. And we know the Chiefs already got a better 6th rounder earlier on today when they made the trade with the Lions to move up in the 2nd round. Are you cool with the aggressiveness?
I'm always cool with if Brett Veach. It goes back to that concept that, is a semi-mantra with the Chiefs and Chiefs Twitter of, in Veach we trust. Brett Veach has shown consistently over the last couple of drafts, they can identify talent, and when they have their guy, they're not going to take a risk in letting their guy even potentially slip by. I'm always here for aggressiveness, and more importantly, I'm here for calculated aggressiveness. And it's one thing to make a trade up and give up a lot of picks, and where you're taking a bigger gamble that you got to hit right because you've lost out on some potential of value. The fact of the matter is you got that better 6th rounder back from Detroit from your earlier trade. So now you use your lesser of your 6 to move 3 spots to get an offensive lineman that you feel could be your starting right tackle either this season or even next season. It's not only an aggressive move that I support, but it's such an intelligently it's that conservative aggressive. It's a weird phrase to use, but it's being aggressive within reason and not being reckless with your trade up. I like Brett Veach's idea here because he does a lot of work to identify the guys he wants. He's going to use his draft capital, the extra draft capital, to make sure the guy he wants gets in his room for his team to make this team better.
So the Chiefs now, with 3 picks, including 2 trades up, have addressed their need on the edge, getting a player who's going to rotate in right away and projects to someday be a starter. He's 3 years in college, and he still is barely 21 years old and has room to put weight on. That's what he did in the 1st round. 2nd round, you take a player in Rashee Rice, who we all love his athletic profile, and all think he's going to be able to do something and can grow into a better player. And then in the 3rd round, you move up, you take an offensive tackle who is maybe a little bit of a project, maybe a little bit of a surprise fit there. Reach, I don't know if is a fair word, but as Jake said, maybe that's another guy who is at least in competition to be your right tackle. And if he doesn't get the job, well, then maybe he's a projected piece for the future. So Dan, the Chiefs have added to all of the needs they had going in. I mean, we've addressed on both Mic'd Up and on 580 Sports Talk over and over, 3 key needs for the team. And it's great to fill all of them. Are you a little surprised that maybe these are all a lot of future projection kind of picks as opposed to day one plug and play kind of picks?
Not necessarily, because, I mean, they are the Super Bowl champions. They got a lot of guys that they can slot in. If there was one spot I thought they might go plug and play, it was right tackle. So I guess in that regard, that's a bit of a surprise. But again, it could be a vote of confidence in Lucas Niang and what he can do, having been around the team and in the system for a while and hopefully finally healthy. So no, it doesn't surprise me that they've looked at guys and said, hey, let's gamble on ceiling here. We're drafting late in these rounds because they're, again, Super Bowl champions. Let's, instead of playing it safe with these picks in the 30s, 60s, and 90s, let's go for ceiling. Let's go for something that if it really pops, then we get great value and we add to what is already the best team in the NFL.
All right, let's get some final thoughts here on day 2 overall. We've gotten through these Chiefs picks. And again, make sure you're checking out our website, 580wibw.com. That is where you're going to find all of our write-ups on all these Chiefs draft picks. And when the weekend's over, we'll have them up for the KU and K-State players as well, as the Avs put in a goal against the Kraken in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Fulton, we'll go to you first. Overall thoughts and biggest headline, biggest jumps off the page moment or pick for you throughout day 2 of this NFL draft.
For me, for day two, looking at it, we talked a little bit going on there with the second round, some of those picks and teams we thought were doing particularly well. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers continue to turn in a nice draft here, including the fact that you're in the back part of the third round. They grabbed Darnell Washington to be a tight end in their tight end room. Darnell Washington, along with Pat Freiermuth, gives the Steelers two legitimate tight end options underneath. I know there was questions with Darnell Washington's medicals and different things like that. But overall, if Washington can be healthy on that field with the Steelers trying to compete in a very, very difficult, we talked about it. If the Steelers can learn to score on offense, and if the Cleveland Browns and their he who shall not be named quarterback remember that he does know how to play football a little bit, that could be the best division in football. And the Steelers have gone another step forward and actually being a competent offense with what they've done. I really like that they were able to get Darnell Washington late in this draft. They've addressed needs at offensive line. They've added Joey Porter Jr. to be a new starting corner for them, or at least compete for a starting corner spot. I've really liked what the Pittsburgh Steelers have done, and it makes me really lean more into the idea that the AFC North might be a really tough division this year in the NFL.
The Darnell Washington pick, I think, is a really smart one for Pittsburgh because they've already got an established starting tight end. And, Pat Freiermuth is good. He is a good NFL player, solid blocker, good hands, not really a deep threat at all. I mean, he's like Jason Witten reincarnate, essentially, with a different sort of body type. I mean, that's the kind of player that Pat Freiermuth is. So you bring in Washington, you can run some of that two tight end stuff. Maybe you are planning to phase out Freiermuth at some point. And to agree, it's something of a lottery ticket because the reason Washington has fallen so far, according to multiple reports out there from the insiders, if you will, it's a medical concern. I don't know what that concern is, and it's probably better that the public doesn't know what it is. But that's a home run kind of pick if you're able to hit on it. But it's crazy that he is the 8th tight end taken. That dude is 6'20", weighs 4,000 pounds, runs a 4.5 40, and he was the 8th tight end taken this year. And I get medicals change things, but that's kind of unbelievable. And you're right. I think Pittsburgh's had one of the better drafts overall. Jake, for you, biggest standout thing about this second day of the draft?
The Chiefs got the two guys that they wanted. When you trade up to get your guy, that is a guy that you believe it. We know this because the Chiefs believed in Trent McDuffie because they gave up a pick last year. The Chiefs tried to trade up yesterday. Brett Veach said that, Felix Anudike-Uzomah was not their first choice. They wanted to go a different route. I don't know who that was, but he said that. That is clear as day. They wanted to go somewhere else, but because they are the Chiefs and I get it. I wouldn't trade with the Chiefs unless they're going to severely overpay to move up in the first round. I think teams have kind of realized that, like, hey, if the Chiefs are going to move up, they're going to have to pay more than what we asked for. Instead of meeting the number, you're going to need to go above the number. They got who they wanted today. They had plenty of guys to choose from at the wide receiver spot. This was their guy. They could have gone with Jalen Hyatt. They could have gone with Marvin Mims. They could have gone a lot of different routes. Cedric Tillman. There was only one wide receiver taken. The Packers took Reed. That was basically it. That was the only guy that was taken off the board for the Chiefs. This is their guy. The Rashee Rice. Also fun to realize, none of us knew that he was down in Texas throwing with Patrick Mahomes. I know SMU right next door to TCU where they're at for OT or for their phase one. But there's nothing coincidental about the fact that, Zay Flowers was there. Quentin Johnson was there. Nobody said anything about Rashee Rice. That ain't a coincidence, okay? They kept that under wraps. And if you got Patrick Mahomes calling Rashee Rice immediately after getting drafted, Patrick Mahomes is excited. Also, you hang up the phone when Shane Buechele is FaceTiming you and you answer Patrick Mahomes' cell phone, first of all. That is a terrible, terrible move there, Rashee Rice. I'm sorry.
Let him give respect to his college teammate.
Yeah, bro code, man. You don't dump your ride or die like that.
You don't dump your college quarterback like that.
Hey, for Patrick Mahomes, you do. I'm sorry. I'm gonna say that. But then same thing on the offensive line. There was Blake Freeland. There were a couple other guys that you could take. They moved up to get him. I think the Chiefs love who they got in rounds 2 and 3. I think they like who they got in round 1. because he wasn't their first choice. You know, it was kind of like, you know, in high school, speaking of prom's going on right now, you know what, hey, so, you know, the Chiefs tried to ask somebody else and either they had already been taken or they said no. So you went with your pick at 31. So I think they're pumped with the 2 picks that they got right now because they traded up and those are their guys.
Dan?
So I just want to piggyback off of what Jake had to say is I think you have to, particularly coming off of last year, where the Chiefs essentially went 8 for 10 with their picks last year, right? I mean, they crushed the 2022 NFL draft. And I think that gives Brett Veach and the scouting staff and the player development staff a lot of benefit of the doubt when it comes to selecting players in this draft, because this may not have been one where a lot of people had these players in particular mocked to the Chiefs, but particularly in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, they had their lasers focus on Rashee Rice in round 2 and Wanya Morris in round 3, and they made the moves necessary to go up and get those players and bring them into their system because they like what potentially they can add. So I think you give Veach and company the benefit of the doubt with these guys and believe that they've got the potential in this system, in this offense, particularly in Rice and Morris's case, to hit their ceiling as players. Other thing that stood out to me tonight on day 2, the day 2 quarterbacks finding homes. Will Levis in Tennessee. Interesting fit, but certainly Tennessee, clearly 1 year was enough of Malik Willis, and they're ready to move on there. Then Hendon Hooker to Detroit. Jared Goff's only got 1 year left on his deal. There's no guaranteed money in 2024. And I think there's definitely a ceiling for how good you can be if Jared Goff is your quarterback. Hendon Hooker is only 3 years younger than Jared Goff. Like, I don't mind Detroit targeting their quarterback in the future. I'm just surprised he's the one. So I thought those were pretty fascinating picks where the 2 quarterbacks ended up tonight.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker, 3 years younger than Jared Goff. They were drafted 7 years apart. That you're getting close to a generation at that point that they were drafted apart, and they're only 3 years different in age. By the way, Hendon Hooker is older than Jordan Love, who was drafted in the year 2020. Final thought for me, because I saved this to the end because I can get on with it quickly. If you're a Packer fan on Twitter who got like freaked out and had a complete chicken tendies meltdown because the Packers didn't take a wide receiver at 13 overall, get over yourself. Go seek professional help. They've had one of the best offensive drafts I can remember in modern Packers history. So chill the hell out. They're going to be just fine. Jordan Love is going to be just fine. We are going to join you coming up on Monday, both on Mic'd Up from noon to 3 with Fulton and with Jake. And then Dan and I will join you from 3 to 6 on Monday. We'll be talking all things NFL draft, our favorite picks, guys who the Chiefs may have missed out on, favorite picks for other teams. We'll talk all things NFL draft plus Royals and so much more. That is coming up Monday on 580 WIBW and on our YouTube channel. You might be watching on Facebook right now, but you can find us on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. If you're watching us on YouTube, you already know where to find us. Go subscribe if you haven't already to the YouTube channel. Best way to find all of our video content, the live streams, daily shows, shorts, all of that. For Dan Lucero, for Jake LeBon, for Fulton Caster, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. We will talk to you guys on Monday for Mic'd Up in 580 Sports Talk on the Sports Voice of Kansas. And